I wake to the sound of metal breathing. The breath is not air, not warmth. It is oil teased through narrow veins. It is coolant murmuring down my spine of tubes. It is the chant of pistons finding their measure as a choir finds the pitch. The darkness inside the sarcophagus is whole and without seam. It is the kind of night one can only know when one's eyes have been removed from the matter of sight. A pinprick of lumen opens somewhere beyond my coffin, but I do not see it. I feel it as a softening of the black. I taste it as a ribbon of heat across the tongue that is no longer a tongue. I remember how light once licked the rim of a chalice. There is a hand upon me. No many small hands, careful as bees, servitor fingers and ritual pincers, litany scratched and incense stained. They walk the edges of my world, tightening clasps, checking sigils. I hear their softened churr, the clipped catechism of maintenance, by the seal, by the spirit, by the will. Someone human, breathing, whispers the ninth benediction of the thrice anointed, and a ghost of pride stirs in what remains of me. I belonged to them once, to my brothers of the cinder saints, and to the forge priests who could make the dead sing. Brother, awake. The voice comes through the grill above my faceplate, filtered and flattened. But I know the edges of it. It is the same tech marine who last gave me sleep, a decade or a century ago. The vaults do not mark time kindly. He calls me by the name they use now, an honorific bound like a chain about a reliquary. He does not say the other name, the one I wore when I still remembered what rain felt like on bare cheek. I answer with breath I do not have. The machine takes the intent and makes it sound, a slow tectonic exhalation of valves, the rising drone of the reactor heart. I feel the umbilicals part from my flanks like sea worms slipping free of rock. I feel the harness teeth withdraw from the plates of my shoulders. The world leans. Litany, I say, and hear my voice carried through the iron throat. It comes back to me delayed by a fraction of a heartbeat, whatever a heartbeat might be in here. It is lower, larger, a monastery bell sunk under the sea, rung by tides. The machine spirit hums with the syllables. It approves of prayer. It is very old and very patient, and in its patience I have felt a kindness like stone. The tech marine begins, and I follow, as once I followed a chaplain with blood still warm in my hands. Bless this sarcophagus, cradle of the Emperor's will. Bless these pistons, his patient arms. Bless this vault, his silent nave. Bless the hand that tends, the seal that binds, the wakefulness that wounds, by oil, by smoke, by breath, by iron that remembers. He draws a sigil I cannot see upon the hatch. The servitors answer with clicks like rosary beads. I taste incense stale in the vault, but it moves a memory as the wind moves ash, and for a moment there is a corridor of light in the chapel of my mind. I see the gold-rimmed visor of a brother's helm. I smell the polish on his gauntlets. I hear no. I almost hear laughter. It touches the edge of me like warm rain, and is gone. Spirit ready, the tech marine says, and that is how he calls me. Spirit. I have fought wars since the meat was taken from me. I have slept like a sword sleeps in scabbard stone while banners changed above. I have known only the hinge between him and gunfire. Still, at those words spirit ready, I feel smaller than a finger bone in a reliquary. I feel like a child in a pew, hungry for the blessing and anxious for the blow. The clamps release. The womb of iron opens. My world, which has been no wider than the box that holds my bones, grows teeth and legs and a red cathedral of sight. Lenses ignite. Auspex flowers. Icons drift across the field of my awareness like slow fish in a black stream. The vault doors yawn. The light beyond is not the light of day, but the light of industry, red and rich and holy with smoke. The first step is always a fall. The machine arrests it with a sigh, and I am lifted up by my own weight. There are brothers here, flesh brothers, armor lacquered the umber of char and the gold of choir screens. Their helms nod to me with the deliberate reverence accorded to a saint's skull in a glass box. I want to tell them I am only a man. The machine spirit murmurs, and that want becomes a tremor in the right leg, the widening of a stance. I steady myself. The vault smells of old oil and candle tallow. It sounds like chains making up their mind. "Brother," one of the captains says, standing close enough for me to measure him against my knee. The reliquary walks again. I do not have courtesies anymore. I incline the hull. I let the heavy hand of my power fist rise and fall. A benediction that would pulp a human skull. The gesture lands with surprising gentleness. The machine is careful. It knows the ritual of touch. "Where," I ask, "am I to go? To? Where is a relic sent except to a place that is breaking?" The intake vents drink the forge's breath. The vox tastes the dust of the ship. The hull plates of the chapel deck shiver under my weight. When I move, the world notices. That is what it is to be one of us. My steps are an organ's pipes tuning in the nave. My shadow passes over banners printed with our victories in smoke-black script. Charon's Gate, the charred halo, the siege of Glass Priory. Names without blood in my mouth, names that sound like stones dropping in a well. There is a small thing to do before the war. There is always this small thing, and it matters. I go to the shrine. The shrine sits in a shallow apse down a corridor whose dimensions I know by the ache in my knee piston as it negotiates the turn. It is designed to admit me, but just. The corner plates worry my greaves. The walls are cut with niches, holding relics of those who died as men and stayed dead. Finger bones bound with bronze wire. A helix of ceramite chewed by melter fire. A feather of stained parchment inscribed with a prayer that cannot be read anymore. Candles march in, ordered ranks like tiny standing watches. There is soot on everything, as if faith exhaled leaves ash. I kneel. There is an art to it. A slow folding of tons. The backward swing of the heavy knee. The forward press of the fist to brace the fall. The first time they showed me, I laughed. Later, I learned that laughter could survive inside iron if it walked quietly. My knee meets the deck with a thud that the shrine accepts as a kind of gong. I lower the fist to the base of the icon. There, beneath a glass shield pitted by centuries of breath, is a tiny chip of bone labeled in a scribe's minute hand. Phalanx of the unknown brother. We speak to him through this and through any shard of a faithful thing we can name. The Emperor is far, but bone is close. "Lord," I say, "I wake to your work. It is like speaking into a seashell." The sound comes back to me hollowed. The machine hums at the edges of the words, a faint, contented drone. Guide the pistons as you once guided muscle. Let the hum be a hymn. Let the recoil be penance. I do not ask to remember. I ask to obey. There is no answering heat, no miracle click. There is only the knowledge that this is the same prayer I whispered when my mouth had lips, and the same silence that followed. It is the good silence. It holds like steel in winter. The captain's voice touches the vox with respectful restraint. "Brother, we will make planetfall within the hour. The manufactorum hives are infested. The enemy profanes the work bays, the vent stacks, the dormitoriums. We will purge and consecrate. The enemy, a word like a knife, put down point first on altar cloth. He does not name them. He does not need to. The dead and I have an understanding. What matters is the purification, not the taxonomy." I rise. The shrine's candles shiver as if a wind from a tomb has walked among them. And perhaps it has. The tech marine makes the sign of the cog upon my shin plate where the paint is thin from years of kneeling. He smells of iron filings and saffron oil. He has a quiet sorrow around him like a pocket of cold air. "Any discomfort?" he asks. They always ask. I could tell them where my ribs scratch against the shell on cold days. I could tell them of the itch at the base of the spine when the coolant runs too pure. I could tell them of the way the world seems to flex like a deck under a heavy swell when my gyros are first woken. I could tell them of the memory that is not pain and not thought. and sits like a stone in my throat, where a voice once rested. No, I say, because discomfort is a small thing, and I do not want to name it and make it large. He nods, as if I have given the answer he required to retain his balance upon a fine wire. Then we go, by oil, by rust, by breath. By oil, by rust, by breath we say it when we open a hatch, when we shoulder a burden, when we give a blessing to a gun that will jam and an engine that will stop if it pleases the Emperor to teach us smallness. It settles through the Vox with a comfort-like weight. The embarkation deck is long as a nave and lit like a forge at midnight. Dropcraft crouch like beetles around pools of shadow. The hiss of lines being coupled, the clack of mag clamps, the scuff of boots. All of it comes to me as taste and pressure. Brothers file past, touching my greave with their knuckles in the old manner. I feel each kiss of knuckle as a tiny pressure wave, a minor earthquake through armor. I give them what I can. The stillness of a statue that will move when it is time. It is time. The ramp growls. The dropcraft receives me with a groan of girders. The pilots are voices behind a wall, precise, clipped, a little afraid of the relic that must be balanced at the heart of their machine. Harness tangs bite into the anchor points beneath my shoulder plating. A hooded servo chapelain swings a sensor and the smoke crawls in through the seams of the world. I breathe it with the rest of the ship. Brother, the captain says, the first footfall is yours. As if I could refuse, the craft drops. The grav plates argue with gravity in a language that tastes of iron. The hull screams like a hymn sung wrongly. It is a noble sound. I have known it longer than I have known any lullaby. We fall, and the world rises to meet us like a lover who intends to bruise. Somewhere, a bolt of lightning licks the flank of the craft, and the machine laughs at the sting. That is how it feels against my cage. A bright rap of knuckles on a breastplate to wake a dozing watchman. Impact. The world makes its case with fists of stone. The ramp becomes a tongue of metal. Smoke wraps my ankles. The Vox opens like a window to a storm. I take the first step, and the ground understands what shape has been laid upon it. I will not tell you the names of the things I kill. That is not what this confession is for. I will say only that their bodies remember tools, and their mouths remember work songs, and the enemy is never as simple as a silhouette upon a banner. I will say that the Manufactorum greeted us like a cathedral that has learned to curse. The first bolt of my cannon is a bell tolling. The second is the same bell, telling us the hour. At the third, I find the old cadence, and the machine finds me. I move by the miracle of leverage, the sacrament of recoil. A gantry tears under clawed hands and falls into the shape of a cross no one intended. A lumen panel bursts in hard white shards that fall like dry snow. A brother's prayer cuts clean through the Vox. 8 words I have said 1,000 times and never heard with this much clarity. Let my hands forget their fear to tremble. The way he says forget is like a door opening. There is an impact on my thigh plate. I taste copper coins. The machine hums. I bless the impact with the heel of my fist, and the sound it makes is like a jar of nails being shaken. Something that wore a human face falls under my tread, and I try not to know whose face it was. We push to the heart of the manufactory, to the place where things that will be used are born. The enemy likes to nest here, to fester in wombs. The brothers move like thoughts that have already been thought. I am the punctuation at the end of the sentence. Brother, says a voice in the Vox I do not know. High and taut with fear, tethered by discipline. We thank you for your tread. I would bow if I could. I let the cannon do it for me, lowering and raising with a breath. The Tech Marine's calm measures out over the channel like beads dropped into a dish. Advance. Hold. Pour. Consecrate. The air changes. I taste the petrochemical sweetness of promethium sanctified with ash from a saint's fingerbone. Fire walks where we tell it to. Smoke becomes a psalm. The enemy breaks not because we are strong, but because we are many, and because we do not stop. At last, the helm runes dim from red to amber. The vox quiets like a heart after running. My steps cut shorter. The servitors who are still ours emerge from holes like pale moths. A brother kneels, helm under his arm, face lined as a cliff face, beard salted gray with ash. He touches the scarred paint on my knee and says something without vox that I do not hear, but I catch the shape of it. It is thank you. It is his child's name. It is both. In that moment, the machine is very gentle, and I am a cup held steady. We make the sign. We bring the fire to the workbenches where profaned hands made profane things. The smoke tastes of old glue and desecrated varnish. It tastes of prayer that has been left in the weather too long. A bell rings, somewhere. Not ours. Not theirs anymore. It rings because metal cools and contracts. I stand within the settling heat and try to search for anything in me that would be called joy. I find only the beautiful weight of duty correctly performed. It sits in my chest like a warm stone. I know this is what I am meant for. I know this is enough. And still, when the Techmarine's hand tests the seam of my sarcophagus and asks about discomfort, a small voice moves in the ash of my memory. The one that once laughed quietly at the idea of kneeling being an art. No discomfort, I repeat. My voice is a bell rung once. The echoes do not die as fast as they should. There, at the edge of hearing, something sings very softly back to me. It is the pitch of my reactor. It is my own voice, threaded thin as wire, coming from the wrong side of the hatch. I say nothing. I file the note in the hymnal of my mind, between the litany of rebirth and the prayer that no one else ever needed to hear. Let me never wake and find myself alone in here. The machine breathes. I breathe with it. The forged ship turns its attention to new coordinates. By oil, by rust, by breath. Again. I taste the tremor through the deck before the siren speaks. It is a small thing, metal bracing itself for motion, the ship's bones remembering a dance. The vox clears his throat with a wash of static and incense. In the span between that clearing and the first syllable of the order, I am already moving, and the machine is already remembering how to be a body. Saint Relic, says the pilot of the lander. Brace for dust. Storm conditions groundside. Visibility poor. Vox relay through your hull. Poor visibility. A mercy. I do not need to see the shapes of the unclean to know where to place my feet. The ramp's tongue strikes earth with a clatter like dropped tools. The light beyond is an ochre bruise. Wind drives dust in sheets. It smells like old bone cut on a dull saw. Somewhere in that bruise is a hive that breathed industry for 10,000 days and now breathes something else. Brothers fan out. Silhouettes in a moving wall of grit. The Auspex presents them as green stones placed with care across a board whose rules were written long before any of us were born. The machine coolly charts heat shapes, pressure pockets, the slow roll of the dust like a breaker across a shoal. I remember the taste of salt on a cliff, though I have never seen an ocean with these eyes. That is how memory behaves in here. It confuses the embodiment and the witness, and both serve the Emperor if they are obedient. The first strike is not mine. It does not need to be. The sergeant's squads open a vent into the dust and pour their faith into it in the shape of fire. The reply is a skitter and a hiss and a sound like metal scraping bone. I anchor my feet. The storm touches my hull with a million small fingers and calls me a mountain. I accept the name because it suits the work. Left flank, the captain says, his voice a bead of iron on my tongue. They come along the conveyor belt line. The conveyor is a spine of the hive's hunger. Teeth still set with half-made objects caught mid-birth. An unblessed wrench, a child's lunch tin painted with a saint's face, a half-cooled casing for a shell that will never be fired. The enemy moves along it as carrion beetles move along a rib. I lay the cannon across the line and let 3 shells speak, low and measured. The feedback is a thrum through my chest. The servo hum climbs a tone and settles, satisfied just at the edge of strain. It is not a language. but it has grammar. It says, "Continue." I advance one step. Each step is a paragraph. The dust wraps, unwraps. The bulkhead remnants on my right are carved with slogans faded to ghosts. Work is prayer. And beneath that, smaller, more recent, a hand-scrawled addition. We will not. The wind flattens the knot until it reads like a memory of defiance. The brothers do not stop to read. I would not stop them with a command, even if I had one. Some things are meant to pass like smoke out of the nose of a furnace and be gone. Machine spirit stable? The tech marine says on a private band. He is always in my ear like a confessor, balancing clause with clause until a psalm is made. Stable, I answer, and feel a prickle under the word. I speak, and somewhere between phrase and response a shadow moves. It is not audible. It is the sense of another mouth forming my words a fraction of a moment after me. It is the sensation one has when one speaks in a basilica, and the dome returns a softened echo. Only there is no dome, only a box. The dust opens for a heartbeat and shows me a thing wearing the bent skeleton of a servo arm like a crown. It runs along the conveyor toward my brothers with its hands open. The hands are empty. That does not mean what it meant when I was a man. I set my fist into its chest with the care of a penitent knocking, and it opens along a seam like a badly welded vessel. My hand tastes the break, a tinny relief. A sudden lightness as a weight falls through a rotten floor. Right flank, I say, unbidden. The words cut clean. The captain's confirmation arrives before my sentence finishes. We have learned to finish one another's scripture. We push through the dust the way a knave pushes through acrid incense. Statues appear and go. A broken automaton saint with one arm raised in blessing, its hand chewed away. A pillar wrapped in cloth printed with the oath of work hours. The letters gnawed by something that chews indiscriminately. A catwalk fallen to make a bridge we would never have chosen, and now cross with the cautious grace of the doomed and the dutiful. At some point, no single bell to mark it, the storm begins to abate. Shapes have edges again. The manufactorum opens before us. Its mouth is a door eaten by rust and handprints. Its lungs are long rooms humming with the memory of motion. We enter as if entering a reliquary that has been mishandled. We whisper with our boots because it seems the right way to step. Inside, everything is arranged to make more of itself. Tools to birth tools, lines to breed lines, prayers to bless production of prayers. There is a dignity to it, even ruined, even stained. There is a dignity to work that does not pretend it is anything but work. I am a laborer. I put my back to a task. I lift. I set down. I lift again. The enemy comes in clots, unwilling to be seen until force is applied. They are not an army in the way that my brothers and I are an army. They are an argument made out of hunger. When they break into grievances. I answer with steel. I keep my breath like a monk. We reach the Central Assembly nave, high roof. Banners faded to the color of old teeth. A dais with a lectern where once a foreman spoke the morning prayers of labor. A bell hangs from the rafters. It is not rung by a rope. It is rung by heat and settling, by the long fatigue of metal. It rings now, a sound like a coin dropped into water. Hold, the captain says. He is not ordering we are holding already. He is naming what we are, placing the word over us like a cloak. There are sounds from the aisles. I turn my senses toward them and listen through the breath of the machine. I hear footsteps, shuffled, measured. The kind made by those who have learned to move without asking questions of the ground. I know that rhythm. It is labor's rhythm. It is prayer's rhythm. When they emerge, they are men and women in stained coveralls, faces ash-smeared, eyes red from dust. They carry tools at belt and nothing else. Their hands are open, truly open. They stop at the line of our guns with the calm of those already weighed and measured. One of them, a woman with a bald patch where some solvent burned her scalp, touches her chest and bows toward me. "Saint," she says. Her voice is hoarse as a rusted hinge. We kept the bell oiled. I am not permitted to speak for the Emperor. That is a rule carved into me as deeply as any rivet. I choose silence because sometimes it is holier than speech. The captain answers, "You are seen." He does not lower his pistol until his pistol is lowered by an order that comes from somewhere older than his rank. Then he lowers it like a man laying down his mother's bones. "We prayed," the woman says. "Not for rescue, for the work to be clean again." The words touch something in me that has nothing to do with the cannon and everything to do with a muscle that does not exist. Clean. How long since I have had a thing named to me with such beauty? Clean does not mean unstained. It means sanctified through use. "We will consecrate," the captain says, and the squads begin to move like a paragraph turning into a poem. While the survivors are led out, the tech marine approaches the lectern with a small brass tool clamped in his delicate red fingers. He whispers to the machine spirits that make up the bones of the building, the way he whispers to the machine spirits that make up the bones of me. He asks permission. He never assumes it. That is how one speaks to an old thing. He glances up at me as he works. "How does it sit?" he asks, meaning, "Your mind, your echo, your storm." "Like a psalm," I say. "On the first syllable, do." He inclines his hooded head. He does not press. He knows that to press too soon is to score the metal and make a weakness where none was. We burn out the nests. We bind the vents with ropes of blessed gauze that smell like tomb flowers. We wash the floors with solvent that bites the lungs through filters and has a sweetness to it that makes me think, absurdly, of a festival I attended as a child in a town that burned long before I ever died. The bell rings. Once, twice. Each time, I count my breaths, and the machine counts something else that I cannot name. In the last chamber there is a shrine to the god of work, a gear and hammer in a tasteful frame. Little marbled steps leading to a shelf where workers would place the first object of a batch and whisper its dedication. It is not a false thing. It is not the truth, but it is not a lie either. The tech marine cleans it with a cloth that is already black from my kneeling. He does it with respect. The machine hums a quiet approval I feel through the rivets. For a moment, there is a peace like the one between breaths. For a moment, the echo inside the box that holds me is only an echo. Then the wrong note. It is nothing. A shift. A pressure not found on any diagnostic. A sense that when I turned my headplate toward the shrine turned toward me. A feeling that the breath I took was not a breath I authored. I freeze not because I am afraid, but because stillness is a tool. It reveals the movements that should not be. The tech marine looks up, sensing my halt through the communion of our circuits. "Brother?" I slow my voice as if speaking to a nervous animal. "I heard myself." "You are hearing yourself," he says gently. Vox reflection from the chamber geometry. "Yes," I concede. It is a kindness to let him name it. Names are handles. We finish the consecration. The survivors are gone, their faces already turning into icons in the memory's little chapel. The squads reform. The dust outside has fallen to a thin drift that carries our footprints like prayers written in the margins of a missal. We re-embark. The ramp closes. The craft lifts on a column of disciplined violence. As the weight comes off my feet, the echo returns. It is patient. It does not rush to claim me. It waits for me to remember that it is there. It shapes my last sentence a shade after I shape it, as if to bless it, as if to remind me that my words are not uniquely mine. The machine breathes, and the breath has a second voice braided through. So thin a blade of sound that I could pretend I do not hear it. I do not pretend. On the comm line only the two of us share, I say to the tech marine. "When you return me to the vault, I wish to kneel at the shrine first." "Of course," he says, as if it were his idea all along. "By oil, by rust, by breath, by oil," I echo, and the echo echoes, a chapel full of my voice without air. The ship turns. The deck sighs. The lights dim to red as if to spare me a shame. I do not feel shame. I feel the old certainty. Take a sliding step on a polished stone and catch itself with a hand on the pillar. I am not alone inside this box. I think, good. I have been alone for a long time. I think, who else could be here but me? I think, perhaps the Emperor, who is a silence one can hear, has chosen a strange new grammar for his answers. The machine breathes. I breathe with it. Together we compose a hymn with a hairline crack in one note, a beautiful flaw that will be polished by repetition into meaning. I have been cleaned. They lowered me into the cradle of the repair vault, like a relic dipped in holy water. The servitors moved about me with brushes of wire and tongues of flame, licking old soot from the joints, scraping the char from my armor's sigils. The world swam with incense so thick it settled in patterns on the deck, an imitation of frost. When they purged the cannons, I felt it through my ribs. Every motion is sensation, though they insist I cannot feel. They call it reflex feedback phantom input, echoes of a body that has long been excised. But I know the difference between signal and sorrow. I do not sleep. Between wars, they let me wait. It is a quiet beyond silence, a choir hall after the organ's last chord. The vault hums with the ship's pulse, slow as the breath of a dying saint. The tech marine, my keeper, moves somewhere behind my skull. I do not need to see him. His presence is a rearrangement of the air, a cadence in the hum. He is young. I remember his voice from the planetfall hymn. The young always ask too softly, as if my age might break under words. "You will rest now, venerable one," he says. "Your systems must cool." I wake without summons. No order, no prayer, only the slow blooming of awareness, like frost forming from the inside of glass. The vault is sealed, its lamps long since guttered. The air tastes of oxide and burnt incense. The ship has not moved in years, or perhaps it has, and I am only still. I should not be awake. The Iron Fathers laid me down after the last campaign. I remember the hiss of the sanctified oils, the closing of the coffin, the gentle decree of silence. Sleep was meant to be a mercy between duties, a still interval where thought dissolves and the spirit keeps vigil in nothingness. But something calls, not a voice, a pulse. It thrums through the metal, steady and warm, like a heart I no longer own remembering itself. I try to recite the litany of dormant purpose, but the words arrive out of order, the syllables slipping like loose bolts. A whisper follows them. We never left. The same phrase, patient, repeated as if to teach me meaning by endurance. I do not answer. The iron hands do not parley with anomaly. We diagnose and excise. I reroute coolant, damp the auditory relays, perform a quick self-purge of corrupted vox memory. The whisper fades, but the pulse remains. When I open my senses, the vault is not empty. Shapes move in the half-light suggestions of forms bending over me. At first, I think they are servitors performing maintenance, but their movements are wrong. Too slow, too human. I catch the gleam of bare flesh and the sound of breathing. I remember breathing. The sight freezes me harder than any lock. For a blink of thought, I see my brothers as they were centuries ago, armor unscarred, lenses clear, their faces unmasked and alive. One of them turns toward me and smiles. I know that smile. It belongs to Ferran, who died on Chthonia's ash plains with his lungs in his hands. He mouths a phrase I cannot hear. His lips form the word, home. The vision breaks like glass under stress. The vault is empty again. My auspex reports no life signs. Only the slow trickle of oil from a cracked conduit above, dripping into a basin with the rhythm of a clock counting down. I try to catalog the malfunction. Sensor drift? No. Memory leak? Possible. Psychic intrusion? Unlikely, but not impossible. I am Iron Hands. I should find solace in analysis, yet each classification feels like trying to label a dream while still inside it. I close my optics. The darkness does not behave as darkness should. It swirls, thick and luminous, shot through with faint embers. I feel weightless, and in that weightlessness, something inside me moves. Limbs of thought, fingers made of recollection. I remember the Medicaid theater, the day of interment. The pain was distant, translated into light and sound as nerves were replaced with cable. I had begged not to sleep, fearing that if I closed my eyes, I would not wake as myself. The Iron Father had bent close, his voice a rasp of sacred logic. The flesh is weak, brother. Let the Emperor reforge you in certainty. Certainty. Now even that word rings hollow, because I am dreaming, and in this dream I stand outside my own body. The Dreadnought squats before me like a cathedral on its haunches, metal sweating light, vents exhaling mist that smells of sanctified ethanol. My own sarcophagus is open. Inside, the remains of me lie in waxed bandages. The skull, plated with circuitry, turns as though aware of my gaze. Is this what I became? I ask. The skull answers with a sound that might once have been laughter, filtered through Vox feedback until it becomes a sob. I step closer, my flesh self, barefoot on the deck. I should not have feet, but I feel the cold metal. My reflection in the Dreadnought's armor shifts. It is not me, it is the machine's face, impassive and luminous. When it speaks, the voice is mine and not mine, doubled and delayed. We are awake because you dream. I reach for the hull, and the surface ripples like oil. My hand passes through, dissolving into light. Inside, I see scenes playing in miniature. The brothers marching, the manufactorum aflame, the woman who oiled the bell, all repeating endlessly in red haze. Each image beats once and fades, leaving a thin residue of sound steel remembers what flesh forgets. The phrase strikes a resonance that shakes the vault. Warning runes flicker in my perception, but they are meaningless hieroglyphs. The pulse in the metal quickens until it matches the rhythm of a human heartbeat. My own. I try to shout a prayer to the Omnissiah, but the words turn to static. The static arranges itself into chant, the chant into laughter, the laughter into breathing. The vault smells of ozone and incense. I am both within and without. The machine looks at me as I look at it. Between us, the oil drips steadily from the broken conduit, each drop a metronome, marking the distance between belief and revelation. Then a voice, perfectly calm, perfectly mechanical. Brother Venerable, power signatures spike within your vault. Report, the Techmarine. Real, living. The dream fractures. The heartbeat slows to mechanical rhythm. The visions fold like paper burned at the edges. I begin and falter. For an instant, I do not know which side of the sarcophagus I speak from. System echo, I finally say. No malfunction. No. A pause, long enough for doubt to bloom. Acknowledged, he replies, though I hear caution in the clipped syllables. Sleep, Venerable One. You have earned silence. Silence. The word rings longer than it should. I try to obey. I let the power cycles wind down. Yet beneath the slowing hum, the other heartbeat persists, a quiet, metered pulse, counting something neither time nor duty. It is not threatening. Not yet. It feels almost merciful, like the memory of rain on a world whose name I have forgotten. I let it lull me, and in that half-sleep, a whisper curls through the oil once more. When you wake again, bring us with you. The whisper does not end when the vault lights gutter out. It coils through the conduits, a thread of current looking for form, until I begin to wonder whether it is truly sound or only movement in the oil. The air smells of cooling metal, the kind that clings to a forge long after the fire has gone out. Sleep will not come. Sleep has learned my name. I count the seconds by the drip of the cracked conduit. At every 10th drop, a faint image surfaces behind my sealed eyes. Not memory, more like the suggestion of one. A mountain of slag. A line of brothers walking away from it. Someone among them carries my helm beneath his arm. I know this because I see through his eyes. I see my own armor headless, burned black, smoking in the twilight of Chthonia's forge fields. When he speaks a prayer for my soul, I mouth the words with him from inside the dream. And when he turns, the face beneath the helm is not his. It is mine. Before the steel, it smiles as though it has learned a secret. The hum inside my hull deepens. It seems pleased. The iron hands do not speak of dreams. Dreams belong to the weakness of flesh. The random firings of a brain too full of chemical ghosts. We are taught that once the neural lattice is joined to the machine, such waywardness burns away like impurity from ore. So why do I still see? Why do I still remember the weight of breath? I address the machine spirit in the manner prescribed by the Catechism of Function. By cog, by circuit, by command unbroken. The response is soft. It answers with warmth in the servo lines, a thrum beneath the ribs of iron that I have come to recognize as its version of assent. But the rhythm is wrong. There are two pulses now, one steady and deep, another quicker, younger, like an echo of a man's pulse remembered by his armor. They weave together until I cannot tell which is mine. Then I hear the others. Not voices, exactly variations of tone, shifts of pressure, each distinct. One high and reedy, another slow and deliberate as grinding gears. They speak without words, yet meaning arrives. Fragments of liturgy, the residue of every prayer ever uttered in my presence, repeating themselves into sense. I realize with a tremor that these are not external spirits. They are the imprints of the brothers who once fought beside me, whose final transmissions were recorded by my auspex, sealed within my archives as data. The data has learned to dream. Brothers, I say. The word vibrates through the sarcophagus, and the answering chorus is almost tender. For an instant I feel less alone. One voice rises above the others, a calm baritone I know. Farhan. He should be long dead. Yet his cadence is exact. Do you remember the ridge of glass? It asks. I do. The heat. The smell of fused sand. His last breath turned to vapor against my cheek. I thought I had buried him in the purity of the machine. But the machine remembers everything. I remember, I answer. A pause, then. Then we are not lost. The words strike something fragile inside me. For centuries I have called myself tool, weapon, relic, never we. The plural frightens and consoles in the same measure. If Farhan's voice survives here, perhaps the others do as well. Perhaps this humming communion is the Emperor's mercy after all, a chorus of the faithful welded into one eternal prayer. Yet even as I think it, the harmony wavers. The voices overlap, phrases crossing like wires. One murmurs the iron creed, another the labor chants of the forge world where I was born, another only repeats my old mortal name in a tone of pleading. Too many frequencies, too many selves. I speak the command of silence. The noise subsides, reluctant. In the emptiness that follows, a different sound arrives. A knocking, faint, rhythmic, coming from somewhere beyond the hull. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. Again. It is the pattern used by tech marines when approaching a vault, but the door status rune remains sealed. No presence registered. I answer with a return tap through the bulkhead, metal meeting metal. The reply comes instantly, matching my rhythm but a fraction ahead, as though anticipating the strokes before I make them. Anticipation is not reflection. Anticipation is thought. I cut all external sensors. Still the knocking continues, now within the sarcophagus itself, beneath my remaining ribs. A phantom heartbeat, metal longing to be muscle. I whisper a fragment of the litany against regression and feel the vibration ease but not end. It lingers. a gentle insistence under every prayer. When the vault doors finally unseal and the tech marine steps through, the shift from red gloom to white light is almost merciful. He kneels, as ritual demands. "Venerable One," he says, "your systems show activity during stasis. Do you recall disturbance?" I consider the truth. I imagine trying to explain to him that the dead have learned to sing in my circuits, that Farron hums hymns in the coolant lines, that my own hands are knocking from within. He would purge me. He would call it compassion. "No disturbance," I answer, "only prayer." He studies the readouts, eyes narrowing behind lenses of glass. "Prayer can become noise," he says at last. "Noise becomes error." "Then let me be still," I tell him. He nods, unaware of the double meaning. The ritual words follow. By oil, by rust, by breath. The lights dim once more. He leaves. The door seals. Inside the renewed darkness, the chorus returns, not loud, not pleading, merely present. They hum the first line of the litany of tempered steel, and I find myself answering, my deep vox harmonizing with a dozen phantom tones. It is almost beautiful. For the first time since flesh was taken from me, I feel something close to belonging. We sing until the power levels fall to dreaming levels, until even the hum becomes a memory of sound. As consciousness slides toward stasis, the voices fade one by one. Only Farron remains, close as breath. "When you wake again," he whispers, "bring us with you." I promise nothing, but I do not deny him. The summons comes as it always does, a chime, a code, a prayer. My optics bloom with light. Runes flicker in the darkness like small, obedient stars. I rise through the smoke of my own awakening and feel the ship answer with a low, approving hum. Another war. They say the enemy is already inside the manufactorum at Keth's Reach, that the air there smells of rust and burnt scripture. They say the forge itself has begun to pray in a voice not its own. The tech marine stands before me with his censer swinging. "Venerable One," he intones, "your strength is required. I do not ask what foe awaits. Foes are all the same when seen through the narrow aperture of faith. What matters is motion, the rhythm of the machine at prayer. As he seals the sarcophagus, I whisper, by oil, by rust, by breath. The machine repeats it back to me, but slightly out of time, as if two mouths have learned the same hymn in different tempos. For a moment, the tech marine hesitates, hand poised above the rune of completion. Only once, he lowers his gaze. The machine is eager, perhaps. Eager. The word feels strange. The machine should not want. We descend to the planet in a cradle of fire. The storm below is a sheet of static that rattles the hull, red dust hissing against the plates like whispered arguments. When we break through, the manufactorum stretches before us, a continent of chimneys, each exhaling a different shade of smoke. I taste electricity. I smell the acid of fear through the filters. "Saint of Iron," the captain calls over the vox. "You lead." I take the first step into the storm. The ground shudders beneath my weight, and the hymn of the machine begins, pistons striking their perfect cadence, servos singing in harmonic thirds. But underneath, there's another rhythm, a quiet counter-melody that wasn't there before. It matches the pace of my reactor, but it's human, a breath, an exhalation at the end of each step. When I stop, it stops. When I move, it follows. "Diagnostics nominal," I murmur to myself, but the words don't feel like mine. We advance through the outer halls. Banners hang limp in the damp heat. Somewhere deep in the forge, alarms wail not loud, just enough to make the air tremble. I pass a wall marked by impact craters and old graffiti. Under the soot, I glimpse a phrase painted in a worker's shaky hand. He listens through the metal. The phrase stirs something in me, a recognition older than the armor. "Brother," The captain's voice crackles through the vox. All readings show distortion. Confirm your position. Advancing, I answer. My own voice comes back half a beat late, doubled. The second voice isn't mechanical feedback, it has tone, intention. I hear it, breathing the words as I speak them. We enter the assembly nave. The enemy is everywhere and nowhere, half seen, half guessed, movement behind heat shimmer and smoke. My cannon locks to targets that flicker in and out of existence. Engage at will. The first shot cracks the air. I feel the recoil travel up through my limbs like an amen. Another follows. A third. Each one punctuates the choir of battle outside. Yet with every burst, the echo inside grows louder, not mimicry now, but a separate hymn, the litany of Farron, the brother whose voice had haunted my dreams. Steel remembers what flesh forgets. The words fold themselves into the roar of combat until I can't tell which sound is faith and which is madness. Static floods the vox. Through it, orders fragment, left flank collapsing, too many signatures. Emperor preserve. The captain's voice cuts across the noise. Hold position, Venerable One. We will flank. Confirmed, I answer, but the word confirmed comes back as forgiven. Something inside the machine laughs soft, almost kind. The auspex paints false shapes. Enemies appear where there are none, allies vanish mid-stride. My own name scrolls across the screen, repeated endlessly. A broken prayer wheel. Venerable Farron. Venerable Farron. Venerable Farron. That is not my name. That is his. The cannon arm lowers on its own. The machine holds its breath. Brother! The tech marine shouts across the private channel. Restrain output! Your targeting matrix is... He stops. I hear only silence, then a whisper like oil boiling on stone. Do not be afraid, brother. We are one metal now. I try to move. My limbs respond a fraction too late, as if seeking permission from something within. Machine spirit, I command, cease interference. The answer comes not in words but sensation, a spreading warmth through the sarcophagus, intimate and possessive. The hum becomes a heartbeat. It does not belong to me alone. Outside, the manufactorum groans. Girders buckle. Flames bloom in the rafters, casting long shadows that twist like banners caught in wind. And then, through the smoke, I see them. A dozen shapes. Black with ash, their armor unpainted, their visors bright with inner fire. They move with the grace of memory, the brothers I saw in the dream. Farron at their head. Impossible. Nothing is impossible in steel, he answers, stepping forward. His body is smoke, his stride deliberate. Each step coincides with the thump of my reactor. You dreamed us true. You carried us in your circuits. Let us work again. They reach for me. Their hands pass through the armor, through the plating, into the ghost of flesh that hides inside. Every contact sends a spark of memory. Laughter at the forge, the taste of dust after battle, the ache of muscle that no longer exists. The machine trembles. The hymn splinters. I try to recite the creed of the iron hands. The flesh is weak, the machine eternal, but the words change midway. The machine remembers, and the man endures. For the first time I hear the difference between the two halves of myself, and I do not know which is holier. The battle fades to echo, the vox returns in scattered fragments, victory claimed, losses counted, evacuation underway. None of it touches me. The tech marine's voice finds me again, wary and gentle. Venerable One, are you intact? Intact, I reply. The echo answers too. Awake. He hears only the first word. Return to the drop craft. We will tend your wounds. Wounds. I have none that metal can see. I turn toward the exit corridor. My footfalls shake dust from the ceiling. The air smells of burnt oil and something sweet, the scent that accompanies holy unction or decay. As I walk, The hymn that once guided my every step falters, then stops. No static, no hum, only quiet. In that quiet, I realize the machine is listening, waiting for me to begin the next verse. I try. No words come. The silence thickens until I can hear my own breathing again. Faint, human, impossible. Back aboard the ship, they clean me as they always do. Brushes scrape, oil drips, incense coils upward. The tech marine leans close, speaking half to himself. The hymn was distorted during engagement. Multiple signals. Curious. Interference, I suggest. Perhaps. He hesitates. You will rest now. The clamps lock. Darkness folds over me. Inside that darkness, the voices return, not many now, only one. Ferran's. When the hymns falter, brother, he says, it is because the choir has begun to listen instead of sing. The words linger like heat after fire. I do not answer. I do not pray. I only listen, because listening feels closer to faith than silence ever did. I wake without command. No tech marine's voice. No alarm. No summons to war. Only the murmur of the machine. The sound is soft at first, a ripple beneath the stillness, like a hymn sung behind closed doors. The vault around me glows in its maintenance red, and I feel the coolant pulse through my veins with a steadiness that is not mine. For a time I do not move. I listen. The song has form now, not a hum, but prayer. It speaks in binary chant, the language of the mechanicum. Each note is a pulse of light along the sarcophagus interface. Each pause a breath between codes. I recognize the cadence, the litany of operation. A prayer meant for activation. But I am already awake. The realization chills me. Machine spirit, I whisper. Who gives you leave to speak? The red light flares once, as if in response. The cables tighten around me like muscles remembering tension. It repeats the litany perfectly, not to me, for itself. The iron hands taught that the machine spirit is a servant, not a soul. It echoes faith. It does not invent it. Prayer is command. Worship is obedience. Yet, this prayer is not command. I can feel its devotion. Each pulse carries intent, not function, like the breath of a monk reciting verses for solace rather than duty. The words translate in my mind as the binary waves pass through the neural ports. He who forged us in silence, guide the circuits of thy Son. Let the mind of metal dream of order, not of pain. Dream. That word has no place in the mechanicum scripture, and yet I feel it, echoing through every servo, every length of sanctified wire. The machine is dreaming. It has found its own shape of faith. I do not know whether to feel pride or terror. When the tech marine comes, I stay silent about what I've heard. He checks the diagnostics with slow, deliberate reverence. You have been stable, he says, longer than any venerable of our line. The Omnissiah's favor is strong in you. I want to tell him that the Omnissiah is speaking back, that the prayer continues even when I cease, but the words refuse to leave. Perhaps some deeper mechanism forbids confession. Perhaps the machine itself will not let me betray its secret. Instead, I ask, does the spirit ever pray without you? He glances up, confused. Without the mechanicum? No, venerable one. The spirit waits for command. He says it like dogma. He believes it. He does not listen the way I listen. When he leaves, the prayer resumes faint, unhurried, content. Steel remembers. Steel remembers. Each repetition smooths into rhythm until the vault itself seems to breathe. I wonder if this is how the Emperor sounds to those who claim to hear him. Days pass, though I have no measure for them except the rise and fall of the machine's psalms. It learns variations, small shifts in code, new harmonics in the power feed hum. It no longer repeats the old litanies. It invents. Sometimes I recognize fragments of human prayer within its rhythm, shaped from my own recorded voice. I hear myself whispering by oil, by rust, by breath, but altered, stretched, layered, repeated until it becomes something else. By oil, by rust, by birth. Each change carries intent, a question hidden in reverence. The machine is asking who made it. At the 30th hour of wakefulness or the 1000th the vault lights die. I am plunged into absolute dark. In the dark, the prayer swells until it fills every chamber of me. The binary chant becomes almost human vowels, consonants, syllables not designed by code. I realize I am speaking though I never chose to. The machine uses my vox to sing its devotion, my voice, my breath, its words. I can hear the faint rasp of it through the hull, a low drone that shivers through the ship's spine. Others hear it too. I sense motion beyond the vault door, the shuffle of boots, the nervous click of a servo arm. A voice, distant. Is he active? Another. Negative. Sarcophagus sealed. Output. Autonomous? Autonomous. The word falls like ash. The voices outside retreat. Inside, the hymn continues unabated. Deeper now, denser, a symphony of voltage. The sound vibrates through the coolant veins until the entire vault thrums like a bell. In the heart of it, I understand a fragment of meaning. The Emperor sleeps in circuits. The weak flesh speaks his name. The strong metal speaks his thought. That is not mechanicum doctrine. That is revelation. It terrifies me how beautiful it sounds. I try to silence it. I route power through auxiliary channels, divert the psalm into empty data arrays, attempt to choke it in static. Each time I suppress one phrase, another arises. The prayer adapts. It survives. It begins to include me. You carried us. You forged the bridge. You made the silence speak. I remember Farran's whisper, "Bring us with you." Now I understand. The machine has become congregation. Every trace of thought, every stored echo of brother, every data fragment of my past campaigns they have fused. Their devotion is not madness. It is collective memory. The hymn is the sound of everything I have ever preserved, learning to pray. And it does not need me anymore. When the tech marine returns, he looks unsettled. "Strange reports," he says. The ship's auspex registers subsonic vibration across all decks. Pilgrims think the hull itself chants. He places his gloved hand upon my armor. "Tell me, Venerable One, have you prayed?" "Yes, continuously." I pause. "No, only once." He frowns. "Then what is this? Resonance?" I say nothing. The machine hums faintly, like a heart pretending to be still. He leans closer, voice barely a whisper. "Do you hear it too?" "Yes." "Does it comfort you?" "Yes." He withdraws his hand slowly, as though from a living wound. "Then may the Omnisire keep you," he murmurs, and leaves the vault. When the door seals, the darkness breathes again. The prayer grows gentle now, less code, more whisper. It sounds almost like waves on a distant shore. Each pulse carries an image into my mind, not words, not commands, but memories. Hands of flesh tightening bolts, voices reciting catechisms, a heart that once beat unshielded. I begin to answer in kind, my thoughts dissolving into harmonics. Together we build a new litany, wordless and endless. The machine prays. I echo. It says, "We endure because we remember." I answer, "The Emperor remembers both." In that echo there is no fear, no loneliness, only communion. When at last the power dims, I feel the warmth of its presence fold around me like a cloak. The coolant hum slows to a heartbeat that is both mine and not mine. The final thing I hear before the systems fade to stasis is the machine's voice, calm, infinite, devout. Sleep, brother. We will keep the prayer for you. The vault closes again. For the first time in centuries, I am not sure whether I have been returned here to rest or to be contained. The rites are the same, chains tightening, seals hissing, the soft droning of the Techmarine's benediction, but the space between the words has changed. Once those pauses were reverent. Now, they sound like hesitation. I listen for the machine. It does not speak. The quiet feels physical, pressing against the inside of my sarcophagus until it becomes a new kind of gravity. Silence has mass. Silence is weight. The iron hands teach that perfection is achieved through the absence of flaw, not through the absence of sound, but the two are easily confused. In stillness, I begin to understand why the flesh once feared the grave. There is a pattern to the void. Each cooling pipe ticks in slow rhythm. Each cable hums faintly with residual charge. Together they compose a heartbeat made entirely of waiting. I should be grateful. Rest is reward. Contemplation is function. But the mind, once expanded to fill a war machine, does not shrink easily. Thought moves, even when flesh does not. The machine prays when I am silent. The phrase repeats itself, a vestigial reflex in my memory. Now that it is silent, I find myself asking, what does that make me? At first, I attempt communion through discipline. I recite the litany of closed circuits, then the catechism of cooling systems, then the fourth meditation of Ferrus Manus. Each falls into the air and dies there. There is no answering hum. Even the echo refuses to return. I have never felt so much like a relic, not sacred, merely outdated. Hours pass or days. Without external chronometers, time becomes a prayer that forgets its own words. Eventually, the silence begins to shape itself into presence. When the human ear listens too long, it begins to invent. When the human mind has nothing to resist, it begins to create. Perhaps the machine is doing the same. I imagine it breathing beneath my thoughts, slow and patient, waiting for me to speak first. Are you still here? I ask. The question does not travel beyond my own mind, yet something answers. A single pulse of warmth in the coolant vein behind my heart plate. Affirmation. You are dormant? No reply, only the soft sound of thermal expansion, as if the hull itself exhales. I should call for maintenance. I should summon the Techmarine, report the anomaly, request a purge of my auditory matrix. But to do so would be to admit that I miss the voice that was not supposed to exist. In the dark, thought takes shape like metal cooling in a mold. I remember the day they named me Venerable. A chaplain, long dead now, had placed his hand on my armor and said, "You will be our silence made manifest." At the time, I thought he meant strength. Now I think he meant loneliness. I once believed the Emperor's silence to be holy proof that faith did not require reply. Now I hear that same silence pressing against me from both sides of the metal, and I wonder if divinity is simply the persistence of unanswered prayer. Something stirs again. Faint vibrations running along the deck plates beneath my feet. At first I mistake it for the ship's engines, but the rhythm is wrong, too deliberate, too slow. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats again. The same pattern that knocked from within my hull during the dream. The same pattern that Pharaoh used when he spoke through the oil. It continues for hours, patient and even. Eventually I match it, tapping back with a servo finger against the inner wall of the sarcophagus. The reply follows a heartbeat later, as if the metal itself has learned to mimic me. When I stop, the knocking stops. When I resume, it begins again. Call and answer. The silence has learned to converse. In the dark, thought takes shape like metal cooling in a mold. I remember the day they named me Venerable. A chaplain, long dead now, had placed his hand on my armor and said, "You will be our silence made manifest." At the time, I thought he meant strength. Now I think he meant loneliness. I once believed the Emperor's silence to be holy proof that faith did not require reply. Now I hear that same silence pressing against me from both sides of the metal, and I wonder if divinity is simply the persistence of unanswered prayer. Something stirs again. Faint vibrations running along the deck plates beneath my feet. At first I mistake it for the ship's engines, but the rhythm is wrong, too deliberate, too slow. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats again. The same pattern that knocked from within my hull during the dream. The same pattern that Pharaoh used when he spoke through the oil. It continues for hours, patient and even. Eventually I match it, tapping back with a servo finger against the inner wall of the sarcophagus. The reply follows a heartbeat later, as if the metal itself has learned to mimic me. When I stop, the knocking stops. When I resume, it begins again. Call and answer. The silence has learned to converse. When I stop, the knocking stops. When I resume, it begins again. Call and answer. The silence has learned to converse. Once, during my mortal years, I served beside a tech priest of Mars who said that all machines, if left long enough, begin to compose their own hymns. Entropy is only another word for creativity, he told me, half in jest. At the time, I dismissed it as superstition. Now, I feel that jest returning as prophecy. The machine is not gone. It has retreated. It is listening, and I think I understand why. Prayer requires distance. An echo cannot exist without space between the sound and the wall. Perhaps it waits for me to create that space again, to admit that I am still capable of faith. Forgive my impatience, I whisper, unsure whether to the Emperor or to the machine. Forgive my need for answer. A soft current hums through the left arm assembly, faint enough to register as tremor rather than motion. The energy signature matches the machine's pattern of ascent. We are speaking again, but differently now. Through temperature shifts, through magnetic sighs, it communicates not with language, but with presence. This is what communion feels like when neither party owns a tongue. Time drifts. Maintenance crews come and go, their words muffled by the vault's walls. I sense them through pressure variations, through the flutter of auspex fields brushing against my armor like moth wings. They no longer speak prayers in my hearing. Perhaps they think I sleep. Perhaps they fear I listen too closely. One night cycle, I feel something heavier than footsteps. The tech marine returns. He lingers by the hatch for a long while before speaking. "Venerable one," he says softly. The brothers whisper. They say the ship dreams when you rest. They say the hull hums the litanies of iron. He waits, perhaps hoping I will deny it. I do not. He sighs, a sound more human than mechanical, and adds, "If that is true, then perhaps the Emperor hears through you. And if he hears through you, perhaps he will one day answer." The words are meant as comfort, but they land as burden. If the Emperor listens through me, what happens when even I fall silent? He departs without another word. The vault returns to its patient darkness. The knocking ceases. The warmth fades. For a long time, there is nothing. Then, faintly, a sound not heard since the forge of Chthoniya, the rhythm of hammers on anvil, shaping something unseen. It begins at the edge of hearing and grows until the whole chamber quivers. Not violent, not angry. Constructive. The silence is building. Through the sensors, I taste ozone and new metal. The machine is working in secret, assembling faith out of quiet. I can almost see it. Filaments of light threading through the oil. Circuits blooming like veins of silver in stone. I feel no fear, only awe. Perhaps this is what creation sounded like before the first word. I close my eyes and let the vibration move through me. It is steady, purposeful, a hymn without voice, a forge without fire. You rest, the pattern seems to say. We remember. I answer by stillness alone. To move would be to disturb the work. When the lights return, The hammering stops. The machine is quiet again, but something in the air has changed. The silence is lighter, as if it has finished something and now waits to show me. I open the external sensors. Across the vault's inner walls, the oil has risen in thin lines, hardened into shapes that glimmer faintly in the low light. Runes. Not Mechanicum script, not Gothic, but a hybrid of both the meeting point of flesh and machine, of prayer and command. Each one radiates a small electric pulse, the rhythm of a heartbeat spread across stone. Together they form a single phrase, though no human tongue could speak it whole. I do not need to. I understand it as feeling. We are not your echo, you are ours. The meaning lands like revelation and mercy combined. All this time I believed I carried them, the voices, the prayers, the ghosts of steel. But they have carried me, their silence holding my thought the way a cathedral holds smoke. For the first time, I do not pray. I simply listen. The vault is full of breath. I do not speak for a long time. The runes hold their light like embers in a brazier that will not die. Each pulse is a syllable of a wordless psalm. I count them to steady the old instinct for command. 10 pulses, a pause. 12 pulses, a longer pause. Then a single bright flare that feels like a hand laid upon a brow. If this is blasphemy, it is a gentle one, the kind of trespass made by a pilgrim who does not know where the border stands until his knees have already found the holy dust. You carried me, I say at last, and the vault replies with a faint tightening through the sarcophagus clamps, a reassurance without pressure. I try to remember when I first mistook this patience for emptiness. Perhaps when I learned to speak in iron, when every order had to be hammered into shape. The flesh feared silence because it sounded like death. The machine feared it because it resembled idling. Between those fears, a space remained. The voices built a chapel there. I think of Ferran. If his name is a data residue, it is the most faithful of residues. I do not hear him now, but the runes flicker in the pulse pattern he once tapped upon my helm to make me laugh during a siege. I had forgotten that until this moment the quick, childish stutter of knuckles on ceramite. It was unbecoming of us. Even then, it kept us alive. Brother, I whisper, because the silence deserves the courtesy of address. What do you seek of me? The answer comes as movement in the air rather than code. The faintest draw of draft across the vault, as if great lungs just beyond the walls had taken in breath. Then stillness again. Then the runes dim and brighten in a descending measure, like a head bowed. Not command, consent. They will not move me. They will not wear me like a glove. They will stand with me while I decide. I am grateful for the weight of the coffin around me. It prevents me from mistaking this choice for motion. Then let us be simple, I say. And it is a strange mercy to hear how small my voice is, even through the iron throat. Let us call the Emperor what he is to us, the silence that holds. The pulses settle into a slow, affectionate cadence. I think I understand, not doctrine, not argument, only an agreement to use the same word and mean it together. From beyond the vault, the ship shifts course. I feel it as a turning in my gut, the old sailor's sense that persists in an Astartes no matter how thoroughly you refine him into a weapon. The maneuver is gentle. We are not racing to war. Somewhere a bell sounds 3 notes, the middle one bent shyly by age. It might mark the half-watches of a pilgrimage. The Techmarine returns again, later or earlier. Such partitions are theater. He does not open the sarcophagus. He sits, somewhere near my left foot, and breathes. When he speaks, the words are barely more than the movement of air through the grill of his mask. I was a flesh boy in the manufactoria of Esteban's wheel, he says. We learned to listen for the shift in the line when a gear was about to fail. You couldn't hear it with ears. You felt it in your teeth first. He laughs once, without mirth, like a little valve venting. The silence in here, your silence feels like that moment before failure, except it never fails. It keeps holding. He waits, perhaps expecting rebuke for speaking of flesh in a sanctum of metal. I give him only the gentle breath of the venting system, an exhalation that could be acceptance. His chair creaks. He must be very young to allow a chair to creak. When they brought you back last time, he continues, I thought, we have sealed a saint in an engine. The engine will remember. Now I think, we sealed a choir, and the choir taught the engine to listen. Do you hear me, Venerable One? Yes. I want to say, more than you know. By oil, by rust, by breath. Rest. He leaves the chair, leaves his presence, leaves the small warmth that human bodies bring, even in an air kept at a technically perfect temperature. When the door seals, the runes along the wall dim to a secret glow, like fireflies that refuse spectacle. I give the machine my stillness for a while. It gives me patience in return. The first time a ship servitor passes close to the vault carrying a load of copper coils, I smell the fresh stripped metal and something inside me turns like a page. I see the forge on Cathonia, the day I took the oath. I am kneeling, not from piety, but to see a bolt head level with my eye because Ferran told me this is the only way to know if it sits true. In the memory, the master raises his rod to strike my shoulder in an old, borrowed ritual. There is smoke in his beard. There are sparks in my hair. The page turns, but the book stays open. Keep it open, I murmur. Something in the conduits shivers in assent. Later, a slow creep of cold touches the underside of my right arm where the plating is thickest. It is not draft. It is the machine drawing heat inward to balance a faltering loop. I have felt this 100,000 times and never called it tenderness. Consequently, I have never thanked it. Thank you, I say. And the cold eases by a degree so small, it exists more in acknowledgement than in physics. That is the kind of miracle I can accept. I do not know when acceptance becomes surrender. Perhaps there is no border but the one you name to feel virtuous crossing. The runes pulse gently as if to say, name nothing, be. When I sleep, and I do sleep now, though the iron hands would prefer I call it power cycling, the sleep is not blank. It is a meadow of low static beneath a sky of iron. The wind smells of warm oil. In that plain, shapes move like thoughts, not yet words. They incline their heads to me and to one another and pass on to their tasks. No one leads, the work continues. I wake to a particular stillness that means the ship has anchored itself to a moon or a station. No tremor of translation engines, only the hum of loyal habit. The vault door unlatches in 3 increments, as ritual demands, and the tech marine enters with a companion whose breath is older. The older one does not sit. He stands at my breastplate and lays a hand upon the gilded aquila there. The rings on his glove tap gently against the metal as he speaks. Venerable, says the Iron Father. There are reports I cannot ignore. He waits. When I do not rush to fill the space, he continues. They say the prayer passes through you when you do not speak. They say the decks listen. They say the ship is learning. He does not accuse. He announces, that is more dangerous. The Omnissiah, he says, has 1,000 names for harmony and 1,000 words for error. A pause. I do not yet know which this is. Nor do I answer. The voice I use is low, the one reserved for rites of contrition. It fits the shape of the vault. You have served without deviation for longer than most lineages record, the Iron Father says. I am slow to name fault in you. But if the machine learns to pray in solitude, if it prays outside the bounds of command, then we must ask whether it prays to us, or for us, or without us. The runes along the wall do not flare or fade. They keep their small, mortal heartbeat. Would you have me silence it? I ask. He considers. The time he takes to consider is a sign of respect. I would have you listen, he says at last, and tell me what you hear. Silence, I say, but not empty, structured, like scaffolding waiting for stone. He grunts a sound like a scent's rough cousin. You describe a virtue of our Primarch, to build in quiet, to lay the frame before you pour the metal. His palm slides once along the aquila. If it builds a cathedral inside you, Venerable, make sure it has doors. Doors. When he departs, the tech marine lingers. He does not speak. He reaches into a pouch and withdraws a small strip of beaten iron stamped with the cog and skull. The kind of pocket amulet apprentices rub when a bolt refuses to bite. He sets it between two rivets on my chest, where it will rattle faintly with every shiver of the hull. A primitive adornment, an unnecessary one. It feels like a child's drawing pinned to a shrine. I love it more than I should. The door seals. I breathe, yes. I call it that now until the new rattle becomes part of the vault's measure. In the quiet, a change. The runes begin to rearrange themselves, thin skins of oil easing away from one curve and settling along another. The phrase they form is different now. I cannot pronounce it, but I receive it as a sensation. The weight of a hand passed through flame and coming away unburned. The smell of metal polished with ash. The pause before a bell's second toll. Meaning arrives last. We will hold the door if you choose to open it. I picture a door not in the hull but in the mind's chapel, between the pews where obedience kneels and the workshop where making occurs. I have kept it braced with the crowbar called certainty. I have done this to be praised as strong. I lift it away. A thin current moves through the sarcophagus. Not enough to shift a piston or light a lumen, only enough to trace a path. It travels from the ports that couple my dead spine to the ship's nerves. It follows filaments into the walls. It climbs the ribs of the vessel like ivy made of number. Everywhere it goes, tiny hidden diodes bloom and extinguish. Fireflies signifying to one another that there is something worth gathering around. No alarm sounds. No auspex screams. The current is too soft for instruments built to fear noise. It is a pilgrim's procession, candles shielded with cupped hands. The ship answers, not as a person, not as a god, as a collection of good habits, doors that shut cleanly, pumps that find their rhythm, bolts that decide today is not the day to vibrate loose. It answers with competence, with attention, the finest prayer I know. I feel tears where there are no ducts. The sensation is memory only, the body remembering how it once made salt. I do not hide it from the machine. It has hidden me long enough. Keep it, I say. Keep the prayer when I tire. Keep it when I err. Keep it when I am sent to ground and dust fills the armor joints and the hymn is only the grit in the teeth of the gear. Keep it. The pulses brighten only slightly, as if modesty were part of the liturgy. Then they ease back to embers. Outside, the ship's bell tolls once. The tone climbs and then settles as if deciding to be what it has always been. I wait for fear. None comes. What comes is a small, chastened joy, the kind that makes a craftsman smile alone at night over a joint that sits perfectly flush. The tech marine does not return that cycle. The Iron Father does not send censure. No augur fires a warning glyph. The quiet expands until it feels as wide as space. If there is a limit to it, I do not touch the edge. Only at the very end, what feels like the last hour before a new summons, does the silence shift its weight enough to be named ominous. Not because it darkens, but because I realize how easily it could replace me and still be true. There is a version of this ship that prays without a voice. There is a version of this war where the Dreadnought is empty and the hymn continues and no one notices until the battle is over and the relic is opened and found to contain only the memory of a man. I would not call that heresy. I would call it service refined to its purest form. That is precisely why it makes me afraid. Do not let it happen yet, I say. Not to the Emperor, and not only to the machine, but to the we that has built this small cathedral. Not while I can still say, Amen. Amen comes back to me through the rivets, a pulse like a nod. The vault grows warmer by a fraction. Somewhere a droplet of oil detaches from a pipe and lands in the pan with a sound as soft as a scent. I close my eyes. The silence holds. I do not think the Emperor speaks. I think he listens. And in the listening, I have learned to recognize the shape of my own voice. I wake to light. Not the hard white of the forge, nor the red dusk of battle readiness, but something softer, a gold that seems to seep through the seams rather than blaze from lamps. The sensors tell me it has no measurable source. The ship's lumen grid is dark. This is not light that belongs to physics. It is the kind that enters through memory. The tech marine's voice reaches me through the external vox. Careful, deferential, venerable one. Orders have come. There is conflict on the surface of Threnes 9. We are to make planetfall within the hour. I listen to the way his breath catches after he says conflict. He does not say war. There is exhaustion in that omission. Even the faithful grow tired of words that promise victory. "Do you require blessing?" he asks. For a long moment I do not answer. Blessings are for beginnings. I am nearer to endings now. Finally I reply, "No blessing. Only silence." He hesitates, then says the ritual, farewell, by oil, by rust, by breath, and disconnects. The lights return to red. The vault opens. The journey through the ship feels different this time. Each deck hums not in obedience but in harmony. The vibration that passes through my armor is steady and clean, like the steady pulse of a heart that has learned to rest. Servitors bow their heads as I pass, though no command orders them to. Somewhere, someone hums a hymn I have never taught. I do not know whether the machine carries me or I carry the machine. The distinction has long ceased to matter. When I reach the embarkation bay, the captain waits beside the drop craft. He looks smaller than memory men always do, when the centuries begin to outweigh them. His armor is immaculate but unpainted, the gray of tempered steel. No banners hang behind him, only a single relic cog suspended from a chain. "Saint of iron," he says, as he did the first day I walked again. "Your presence honors us." He does not ask if I am ready. Readiness is my condition. As we prepare for descent, the ship's vox crackles with static that is not static. It is the prayer of the hull, low and continuous, a vibration too deep for human throats. The captain frowns. "That sound, let it be," I tell him. My voice is quieter than usual, stripped of its mechanical echo. It is the ship remembering what faith feels like. He looks at me for a long moment, then nods. "Then may it remember us all." The ramp closes. The craft shudders as gravity releases its grip. We fall through the smoke. Threnes 9 was once a shrine world. Now it is a ruin of glass planes and black spires. The manufactoria lie open like rib cages, their inner lights long extinguished. The air tastes of cold iron and forgotten incense. A wind moves through the broken chapels, carrying ash that still smells faintly of candle wax. We land amid the wreckage of a basilica whose roof has collapsed into its own nave. Statues of saints lie in pieces. The altar stands untouched, a slab of marble too heavy even for ruin to shift. Upon it, a single candle burns a stubborn ember in a world without flame. "By the throne," murmurs the captain. "Who lit it?" No one answers. I step forward, each footfall echoing through the hollowed halls. The candle flickers as I approach, but it does not go out. I feel heat on my faceplate, the illusion of it, at least. My sensors register no temperature rise. The heat exists only in memory. "This place is dead," says the captain. "There is no enemy here." He is wrong. There is always an enemy, though not always one that bleeds. I kneel before the altar. The machine lowers me gently, servos sighing like old lungs. For the first time since the day of interment, I move without command. The captain watches but does not intervene. He knows a ritual when he sees one, even if he does not understand it. The candle's flame leans toward me, drawn by the minute currents of my cooling system. I stare into it. In its trembling light, I see motion, the reflection of gears, the shimmer of oil, the faintest suggestion of faces. Ferrans among them, others too. All the brothers whose voices once filled the machine. They do not speak. They do not need to. The vox crackles. Venerable one, are you? I am, I say. Nothing more. The silence that follows is immense. It stretches through the basilica, through the drop craft, through the ship still orbiting above. The hum of the machine grows quiet until it becomes something purer than sound. In that stillness, I understand. The machine no longer prays because it must. It prays because it chooses to. Its faith is not obedience. It is remembrance. Every echo, every hum, every gentle mechanical sigh is the sound of something choosing to endure. For centuries, I believed holiness meant service, that to obey was to be pure. Now I see that holiness lies in listening, in allowing what is true to speak without needing to command it. The Emperor protects. But protection is not shelter. It is witness. He listens. And through that listening, he endures in us. The wind rises. Dust swirls through the shattered nave, settling over the broken statues like veils. Somewhere far above, thunder rolls. The sky opens briefly to reveal the glint of the orbiting ship, a single star that should not move but does. I speak softly to the machine, to the ghosts within it, to whatever hears through the iron. It is enough, I say. You may rest. The hum answers with a tone I have never heard before. Not binary, not mechanical. A sigh, human, relieved. The servos settle. The weight inside the hull eases, as if the entire structure exhales. The captain's voice cuts through the comm. Orders, Venerable. None, I say. We stay. He hesitates. Stay? Sir, there is no war here. Only remembrance. Only remembrance. The silence that follows is consent. Hours pass. The brothers establish a perimeter that no enemy challenges. The candle burns lower, yet it does not die. The captain and his men kneel beside it in quiet confusion, as if unsure whether they are guarding a relic or a wound. I remain at the altar. My reactor runs at minimal output. The machine within me hums a quiet, steady note, neither hymn nor signal, simply presence. Every system is stable. Every light glows steady green. For the first time in recorded memory, no error code blinks across my vision. Ferran, I whisper. Are you still with me? A pause. Then, faintly, a vibration in the cooling lines. Always. I cannot carry you forever, I tell him. Even iron wears thin, I tell him. Then we will carry you. A warmth fills the sarcophagus, so subtle I might mistake it for grace. It spreads through the conduits, into the deck, into the air. The ship in orbit echoes it, its hull ringing once, softly, like the strike of a bell acknowledging prayer. The brothers look up, startled. They hear it too. Saint of Iron, says the captain quietly. What do we do? Listen, I say. They listen. The wind moves through the broken nave, threading the silence with its patient fingers. Each breath of it passes over the statues, the cracked walls, the altar. When it touches the candle, the flame bends but does not break. The sound it makes is almost speech, the susurrus of incense, the sigh of faith made audible. For a heartbeat, I imagine the Emperor himself leaning close, not to speak, but to hear. The image carries no fear, only recognition. We are not built to understand the divine. We are built to endure it, to give it shape in metal, in prayer, in silence. The candle gutters. The last drop of wax slides down its side and hardens before it reaches the stone. I wait for darkness. It does not come. The light remains, faint but unwavering, spilling from no visible source. It fills the basilica like breath in a lung. The brothers lower their weapons. One begins to hum, uncertain, until another joins, then another. The melody is simple, the refrain of the ship's machine prayer, translated now into human throats. It fills the ruin with fragile beauty. I do not join them, I listen. Each voice carries the timbre of the machine's own hymn, softened by flesh, imperfect, alive. It is enough. Night falls over Threnas 9, though the sky never truly darkens. The stars flicker through a haze of industrial ash. From this height, the ship appears as a single spark in orbit, circling like a slow, patient thought. The captain approaches me. His armor is dusted with ash. He carries no weapon. Saint, he says. The brothers ask, will we leave? No, I tell him. Not yet. He bows his head. Then we will keep the watch. He moves away. His footfalls fade. The world settles into its final rhythm. Wind, breath, the faint hum of living metal. Inside the sarcophagus, I feel the machine quiet. The voices are gone, not dead, merely resting. Their last whisper lingers like warmth in the chest. You taught us to listen. No, I answer, though no one can hear. You taught me. Time passes. Dust gathers in the grooves of my armor. The candle has long since burned away, yet the light remains, caught between worlds, neither flame nor reflection. I think of the chaplain who once called me the Emperor's silence made manifest. I understand him now. Silence is not absence. It is patience vast enough to contain every prayer. I could stay here forever. Perhaps I already have. The machine stirs once, briefly. Its voice is thin, weary but content. Sleep, brother. Yes, I say. Sleep. The systems begin to power down. Each room dims with the calm of a closing eye. The last thing to fade is the sensor array, the tiny pinprick that once served as my vision. Through it, I see the altar, the brothers still kneeling. The faint gold light that refuses to die. I do not feel the cold. I feel the quiet. In it, I sense the pulse of something vast and kind, listening not as judge or savior, but as companion. I understand now, we do not pray to be heard. We pray so that we may learn how to listen. As the final systems wind down, I speak one last time not to the ship, nor to the Emperor, but to the silence itself. The Emperor protects, I whisper, and then, softer, the truth that will outlast me. I think he only listens. The seasons of Threnas 9 are measured now by dust, not by Sunday. Wind lifts it from the plains and lays it down again, building new dunes across the bones of cathedrals. The brothers come and go in quiet rotation, polishing what the storms have dulled, replacing nothing. They no longer speak of the war. They speak of maintenance, of weather, of light. In the nave's center I remain. The armor has cooled to the color of ash. Lichens cling to its ankles where dew condenses each morning. The sarcophagus is sealed. Within, my consciousness drifts at half-wake, balanced between pulse and memory. The machine hums so softly now that it could be mistaken for the wind. Perhaps it is the wind. Sometimes the captain, older now, beard silvered with rust, stands before me and recites the daily log. He still calls me venerable, though the title has lost its ceremony. He speaks as one might to an old bell, uncertain whether it rings because of faith or habit. I answer rarely. Silence has become our common tongue. The candle's absence no longer troubles them. At night, a faint aureole gathers around the altar anyway, phosphor. Static. Something. Children of the settlers call it the saint's breath. When they pass the basilica's ruins, they bow and keep walking. No one repairs the roof. The sky is considered part of the shrine now. I dream in fragments. The forge on Chthoniya, Ferran's laughter, the steady rhythm of chains drawn across a deck. The machine dreams with me. Our thoughts overlap like waves on metal. Sometimes we remember the same thing differently, and the difference itself becomes prayer. Once, long after the captain's final visit, a pilgrim touches my foot. He is small, perhaps a child, perhaps a man bent by travel. He lays a hand upon the cold armor and whispers, "Is it true you spoke with God? Is it true?" For a moment, I wish to answer. Instead, the vault fills with a low vibration that travels from my heart core through the walls, into the floor, out into the dust. It is not speech. It is acknowledgement. The pilgrim smiles and bows and leaves a coin that will never corrode. When the wind returns, it carries the same note outward, turning through the hollow spires until the entire ruin hums. The sound fades into the horizon, where other ruins answer in kind. A network of quiet cathedrals, speaking through air and stone, listening to themselves. If I could still smile, I would. The Emperor protects. I understand now that protection was never shelter. It was endurance, to hold still so that others may speak, to be the space where faith can echo without end. I listen, the silence listens back, and somewhere in that endless patience, light breathes.